you want to move to New York City. Welcome to the First Gen Money YouTube channel, where we talk about all things money, mental health, life from a first gen perspective. Today's video is going to be covering the cost to move out of your parents' basement and into your own New York City apartment. I shared an apartment tour video. You can watch that here if you haven't already seen it. Basically, I showed you our apartment. I also wanted to provide something helpful besides just showing you the nice things in our apartment. Ari and I were living in his mom's basement for the later half of 2020, 2021, and most of 2022. We knew that we wanted to move out and move back to Brooklyn because this is where we were living before we had moved to Ari's mom's basement. With layoffs, with a sabbatical that I took, it just wasn't possible to financially have the goal of saving for our apartment. And so finally, when we were ready to start looking, So I want to kind of walk you through some of the things that are important to think about when you look to move to New York. So number one, understanding the seasons, right? So when we moved into our first apartment together back in 2018, we knew, we had heard, we had done our research. We knew that the summer was always the popular time to move to the city. Makes sense. People are graduating college, probably moving into their first apartment. I feel like school has something to do with why the summer is very popular. Because of that, it's always very competitive. There are less things in the market. There are just more people looking for housing. So things are gonna go fast. Winter, best time, or better time. I feel like it's always competitive, but in the winter, it's more likely that you have more options. And so we knew that when we were looking at our first apartment. So we looked in the winter and we signed our lease in February. This time around, we understood the seasons. We knew, okay, it's best to just hold off in the summer. We took our Euro trip, we came back, we were saving up, and then we're finally ready to go. Our goal was to try to find a place in the winter because we knew we'd be able to find, but we're more likely to find a better place or have what we wanted available. Now that doesn't always happen. Things happen, right? So you can't always count on that, but just know the seasons. Know when things might be more competitive versus when they might not. So summer, more competitive, winter, less competitive. Know what neighborhood you want to live in. I think that's a big deal, right? And I don't know what should come first, the budget or the neighborhood. I think start with your neighborhoods first. And then when you realize what your budget is and you know what neighborhood you want and you see literally nothing in that neighborhood for the budget that you have, then maybe you're okay, where else can I go? Understand the neighborhood you want to be in. What things do you want to do? What things do you want to have walking access to versus have to take a subway to get to? I don't know how you do that without being here. I would personally never sign a lease to an apartment that I haven't seen myself. I know people were doing that a lot. People were doing that a lot in 2022. I think even 2021. I don't know. People were signing things sight unseen. We're messaging a few apartments before this one, and they were application was accepted. And we're how do people get accepted if the open house hasn't even happened? And so you start realizing that people are looking at things sight unseen. I wouldn't do that. I don't know how you check out which neighborhood you want to be in without actually being in New York already. Maybe you get Airbnb for a month and just check out the different neighborhoods that you might like. But I would say do that before you commit to something, because once you commit, you commit. We knew what neighborhoods we wanted. This is the same neighborhood we were in before. We had our different things. I wanted to have a park close by. Ari really just wanted to be back in the neighborhood. So just know what you want. And I was also flexible. I was as long as the price is right, I will go anywhere. Just understand what it is that you want, because different neighborhoods offer different things. Where do you look for an apartment? So I wish I had more to say here, but we found our apartment on Street Easy both times. I feel it's just the popular place to go find an apartment in the city. Very easy filtering, pick out the neighborhoods you want, sign up for alerts. I know Ari, he's the one who found this apartment and was very much an alerts person, but also like know when you're looking. Leases are usually up the 15th and the last day of the month. So you're gonna see most things come up around those times. I think we saw this apartment come live at the end of August. So it was like the end of the month. And once it gets closer to the end of the month, they're just gonna be more options, right? Like in the middle of the month, it's gonna be like less. So I feel like people start getting desperate at the end of the month. So always be refreshing. That is the secret, is to Street Easy, is just to refresh. I know Ari found this apartment within 10 minutes of it being listed because he was always refreshing. Anytime he went to the bathroom, phone, Street Easy, constantly being on top of it. Street Easy, main option. Another thing I would recommend is hot pads. I have seen people use that before. I don't know if that is more like Jersey City focused, but I know that's one that people have used. Other websites, I also like the newsletter Listing Project. I want to say they're less of the like investor buildings and more of the mom and pop buildings, mom and pop landlord type of buildings. So I've seen a lot of good things out there. In the search, I found some decent apartments at really good prices. So I would check out Listing Project. You have to be a subscriber in order to get their listings, but go ahead and subscribe. There are a ton of websites, but I think those are the like top 3 that I have personally used. Now the fun part. What does it actually cost? Like what cost do you need to prepare for when you move into the city? So a lot of costs. Like with any apartment that you move into, you need your first month's rent and a security deposit, which is typically the same amount as your first month's rent. Some apartments might ask for last month's rent, but I haven't seen that in my experience. I've only seen first and security deposit. Many times you are lucky to find a listing without a broker, but most have a broker fee. I absolutely do not like broker fees because they just make no sense to me. I found this apartment. I'm not working with you. I found this apartment. You literally just showed me the apartment. You are working for the landlord, the person who listed it. So why should I have to pay you? They were banned in 2020, very short, like for a short period of time before the real estate lobby was like, lawsuit coming your way, and then they ended up winning that lawsuit. So here we are again with broker fees, which are expensive. They range, right? It could be the price of 1 month's rent, or it could be 15% of your year's rent. It is annoying. Give you 2 options. So the option 1 is, let's say your rent is $3,000 a month. If it is a $3,000 a month apartment and the broker fee is just 1 month of your apartment, then that is it. Now, if it is 15% of your annual rent, then 3,000 times 12 is 36K. And then 15% of that becomes 5,400. 5,400 for a fee to pay to someone who just showed you the apartment. I also heard that people or brokers in the summer of 2022 were charging people if they came to see an apartment and didn't apply. I don't know how any of this is legal, but clearly it is. It just sucks, right? That's a lot for a fee for some service that you barely used. That's how it is in New York. It's because it's competitive and they're showing you an apartment, and so they hold the keys and you got to pay them for that. Moving costs. Okay, moving costs. This is like the more practical, like logistic costs to move, right? Are you bringing furniture? Are you like, what is associated with moving costs? We were in New Jersey, so we didn't need to buy tickets to come move to New York. We didn't need to pay for gas for a cross-country trip. But take into consideration what your moving costs might be. Is it a plane ticket? Movers, like what are you hiring people because you have a couch that you need to get brought from New Jersey to New York? Like what is included in that? That is gonna range depending on what you have and what you need to bring to your apartment. Of course, if you're kind of like moving without a place because you want to check out the neighborhoods, then you're probably not going to come with much. You're probably going to come with a suitcase and your clothes and all that stuff. But if you found a place and you're moving furniture and all that stuff, the moving costs could increase. So that's something that you're going to want to break down depending on like what you have. If you have furniture, you're going to want to like consider a van, things to help you in that process. This move was the first time we hired a moving company to help us. The first time we moved in and out of our last apartment, we did it ourselves with I think we got a U-Haul when we moved in. Yeah. And then we got a U-Haul when we moved out. So that was significantly lower than what it was to move in this time, but that's just where we were in our life at that time. We also had like less things. It was just a different situation. Moving costs, it's gonna add up. Another smaller fee, I think this is the smallest of all the costs, is the application fee, which is probably like $25 to $30, depending on, the broker. But you need to pay it. You're applying to live somewhere. The application process, the fee of them hosting the application on their site. Whatever, it's one of those things. It's like, why do I have to pay now, again, a fee to apply? But you apply to college and you have to pay an application fee. I guess it's pretty standard. Now moving on, outside of the things monetarily to prepare for, you also want to keep in mind what documents you need for this application process. It is an application process. It requires literally lots of documents, right? They want to have proof of income. They want to know that you've been a good tenant in the past. So some of the things that they might ask for are bank statements. They're definitely going to ask for bank statements. They're definitely going to ask for W-2s. They want to know like your tax records. They want to have your pay stubs, letter of employment. That was something that they didn't ask us the first time we moved into our first apartment, but for this apartment, they wanted a letter of like being employed. I wasn't going to ask anybody at work for that, so I just gave them like my offer letter. Maybe that's an option for you too. A letter from your previous landlord. We didn't have one from our first apartment, so we just had a letter from Ari's mom because she was our landlord. We were paying her rent, even if it was like almost nothing. A screenshot and photos of our like savings, our retirement accounts. Literally, they wanted to see like all the money that you have available. So like all savings accounts, our retirement accounts, our extra investment accounts. And why do they ask for all of this paperwork? Why do they ask for all this proof? So there's no like law in place, but there is a rule of 40 times rent. So in order for a landlord to be like, okay, this person is someone that I can trust to make rent, they want to see that you make 40 times your rent. So in that example of $30,000 a year, $30,000 a month for your apartment, with the 40 times the rent rule, 3,000 times 40 is 120. If you want to qualify for an apartment that's $3,000 a month, you need to make at least $120K a year. Keep that 40 times rule in mind. If you don't make that, there are other options. You can apply with a grantor. I don't know why that word is sounding weird, but you can apply with somebody who's like essentially co-signing the lease with you. That's what it is. They're putting their name, attaching it to the lease so that basically if you can't pay it, that person is responsible for it. But that's why they ask for all of these things, because they're like, we want to make sure that this person is able to afford to live in this unit. It really depends on the landlord. Because some don't care as much. But if you are applying I think it also helps your application if you do make 40 times. Because if you're applying with somebody who doesn't, then maybe they might want to go with somebody who does. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm going to share what it cost us to move out, because knowing all this is helpful, but like, what does that look like for an apartment? Like, what does that actually come out to? Okay, so I'm going to break down our costs. Our rent is $24.75. So the first month's rent, we needed to have the $24.75. Security deposit, we needed to have $24.75. The broker fee was 15% of our rent plus. People were competing, so the broker fee was $4,500. So we hired movers, as I mentioned, and the actual hiring of the movers plus their tip, the total came to $1,280. Renter's insurance, because you want to get renter's insurance. If something were to happen with the roof and rain would come into your apartment, your furniture would be messed up. That is not the landlord's responsibility. That is yours. So you want to get renter's insurance, even if it sounds like I don't need it. $215 for a renter's insurance for 2 people. Furniture and styling, decoration, the lamps, like literally, not the lamps, the light bulbs, everything that we needed to like get this apartment situated came out to $3,100. So our total cost to move into this apartment was $14,045. Use it as your barometer. For a $2,475 a month apartment, you might need 15K. Now, of course, that takes into account what it costs for us to furnish it. But if you're also moving in with 0 furniture, you're gonna need to furnish your apartment. Do you need to furnish it the way that we did? Absolutely not. A lot of the things that we did buy was new. Some things we got off Facebook Marketplace, but I also found like things weren't that much cheaper on Facebook Marketplace. I don't know what's been going on, but I just feel like the quality there for what they're selling it at is just not, it's not there. Some of these things like won't be necessary for you. Like to furnish your apartment, you might not need $3,000. Maybe you want to budget less than that. But like keep in mind that you might need $15,000 to move into an apartment. That's what it cost us to move out. That's what we needed to save. And that was like our goal. Like I knew we had, before we started looking for apartments, we had broken down the math of like what it might cost. We already understood these things because we had a Brooklyn apartment in the past. So we knew like, okay, there's gonna be a broker fee. There's gonna be a security deposit. There's gonna be first month's rent. There are gonna be all these other costs. Like we kind of knew that this was the amount that we need to prepare for. And we actually were planning 20K and we came under. It's always better to oversave when you're moving out. I hope it was helpful to kind of walk you through like what you need to consider when you move into an apartment in New York City. I hope it was helpful to share my numbers because, you know, sometimes we see people's apartment tours and we're like, oh, like how much does it cost though? So that's what it cost us to move into this apartment, to have it furnished, to have it look the way that you saw in that video. And if you're moving to New York, good luck. It's annoying sometimes. Try to navigate finding a good apartment, but keep refreshing. That's all you gotta do. You have to be the first one to find the place. You have to be the first one to message the broker. Be persistent. You want to keep reaching out to that broker. Story time before I'm actually done. But for our apartment, Ari was like the first message I'm sure that the broker got. And we couldn't look at the apartment the day that she was doing the open house. So we said, can we view it this day instead? And we were flexible. Like we had to leave work early. We had to drive into the city. Like we were flexible. And when we got here, there were 6 other parties viewing the apartment. When she saw Ari, she was like, oh, hey, you're the reason why everybody else is here because you asked for another open house date. And he was like, good, great. I thought it was just gonna be us. It wasn't just us, it was other people. I mean, I'm sure other people were too, but like we just kept messaging her. We're like, she hasn't texted back. Text her back, Ari, you know? Be on top of it. Show your interest, especially if it's an apartment that you want. Let me know how it goes. That's all I have. I will see you next week.